Welcome everyone. We're excited to unpack more about how to raise local funds with Redina today. So I'm going to head over to our slides. We are talking about 3 steps to release local funding. This meeting will be recorded, so don't worry if someone registered and want to see it later. They will be able to get it on the 54 website. So it will be available there soon. And please stay on mute so that we don't disturb the session. And if network allows it, we would love to see your face. So please switch on your camera. And there will be time for some questions in this session. We've set aside some time for that because we love to engage, and we know you also sometimes have a question on your mind that's really valuable to share for the larger group. So if you have any questions that comes up as we go through the session, please pop it in the chat. We would really be happy to see that and make some time to address all of those questions. And we will be breaking out into small discussion and breakout rooms. We'll keep you to the same group so that you can engage and get to know each other. And stay right until the end. Don't drop off earlier because we've got an exciting announcement right at the end for you. So we would love to have you for the full time if you can. Our presenter today is Redina Kolaneci. She's the founder of Christian Fundraising Consultancy, currently based in the UK. And she's originally from Albania. So it's always great to chat with her, and we'll introduce her a bit more very soon. And related courses that's very, very exciting, coming soon. Hard on it to get it ready is specifically for you, and it's Biblical Principles of Fundraising, how to do good fundraising and measuring the effectiveness of your fundraising. So we'll definitely let you know. Stay tuned, and we will let you know when the content has dropped. And then today, like I mentioned, we are talking about funding. And what I found so interesting is to see how donors are inspired and how that's changed over the years, and how we see that in different generations. So when we looked a little bit into the trends that we see in fundraising and in donors, we found that if we look at, if you can follow me over here, from baby boomer donors to Gen X donors to millennial donors, their interaction with social media has changed. So starting from 19%, it's increased to 33%, and then to 39% of donors that's actually inspired to give funds through social media. And the opposite happened with email. So baby boomers are inspired to give donations through email. It was 33%. And it got less to 26%, and now on 23% for millennial donors. So, Ian, what comes to mind when you look at this data?
Thanks, Nina, and thanks for setting us off. It's just so great to be together and be learning together. And this is interesting, actually. I think what comes to mind for me is we're looking at 9 different aspects of organizational development on the wheel on the left, and today specifically focusing on funding, but they're also interlinked, right? And so funding is fed by communication and identity. If we are able to tell the stories of who we are and to tell them well and to communicate effectively, it'll impact our funding. And likewise, for example, impact management, being able to actually gather the data and the information about the difference our work is making is also interlinked to that. And so I just love, that's a really interesting stat for me, that shift from email to social media in terms of how people are inspired to give. And my sense is that's probably fairly true globally. I think this is a global stat that you pulled out for us, Nina. And so for us to have an awareness of how we're communicating and how we're reaching the people in our community is really important, so that we can have a healthy funding strategy into our local communities is really important. Health is so important, and when we're unhealthy, it changes the dynamic of our organization. It sucks energy away from our mission. And so when you're constantly anxious and stressing about funding, for example, it is going to take away energy from your mission and your ability to focus your energy outward. And really, so really today we trust that you will be able, for all of us together, that we'll be able to gain some insights on creating a healthy organization around this fundraising dimension. I think we've got a couple more AHA slides to go into next. So let's go into that. And just for those who, maybe before you move on to the next one, Nina, just quickly go back to that first one. I think a few people missed this. Really interesting around the Statue of Liberty. Nina pulled this out that Joseph Pulitzer raised over $100,000 just for the pedestal, the base of the Statue of Liberty. And that 75% of the donations were less than $1. That's incredible. I mean, how many people he must have inspired to give is fantastic. So, let's go on to the next one. So the next question for us is, if you haven't yet joined in, by the way, to this, please just scan the QR code or open a web browser and go to ahaslides.com/localfunds, and would love to get your contribution here. It just takes you a second to jump onto this and give us your thoughts. The question that's asked is, fundraising campaigns with updates to donors raise what percentage more than those with updates? So in other words, if you're running a campaign and you're giving updates, it's going to increase your funding. And so what percentage is it more than running a campaign with no updates? Is it 47, 79, 95, or 126%? What are your thoughts? Interesting this, isn't it? Just simply by giving just by giving updates on a regular basis, we're able to increase the funding we receive. I think that's quite remarkable, actually.
Yeah, I think we often underestimate the impact of giving some updates and just taking the donors on a journey with us, helping them see what's their investment, the difference that it's making and the impact that it's making.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting one.
Do stay on this slides. We're going to use it through the course of our session together. So as you get in, if you haven't yet joined, I see we've only got sort of 13 people in. Please do join us and give your thoughts and stay in this. We're going to use it, but just give us what is the correct answer here, Nina? 126%. Amazing. Eh? So it's like doubles, more than doubles the fundraising. Well, it has raised 126 more than those with no updates. That's just quite an incredible stat, actually.
Yeah, I was quite amazed by this.
Yeah. Let's go on to the next one. So just as you think about your organization, you've got funding coming in from abroad, from international donors, but you've also got local funding. What percentage do you think of your organization's funding comes from donors local to you? Is it 0 to 25%? Is it in the 25 to 50% bracket? Is it 50 to 75 or 75 to 100? And maybe I just see Ben is asking if we can put the link. The link's on the screen, but maybe someone can also, Nina, just, there we go. Thanks, Renette. Posted it in the chat. It's okay. Renette has put the link in the chat as well.
Great.
So just quite interesting to think about. Yeah, thanks, Nina. Just quite interesting to think about what percentage of your funding comes from local donors. And it's a challenge, isn't it, to raise local funding? It's sometimes our default is to jump to looking to foreign donors, particularly for us based here in Africa. Funding mostly comes from abroad, and so our tendency is to look abroad rather than to take the energy to gain local traction and to build relationships locally with people who might be interested in supporting us. So I'm really excited to see that most people are actually saying that are on this call are saying 50 to 75% of their funding is local. That's incredible. And so, and if you're in that 75 to 100% bracket, well, I mean, well done to you. You've worked hard to build traction and local community as you've set up your organization. So that's a really interesting, a really exciting bit of information, actually. What comes to mind as you look at this, Nina? Any thoughts, Nina?
Yeah, it's great to see there's a big majority. Yes, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, you're coming through.
Seems like I'm not coming through. Sorry. Am I back online?
You're good.
Yeah, you, Nina.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's interesting to see. I'm quite surprised to see such a big percentage of individuals being above 50%. So that's really great, and it excites me, and it tells me that we're going to have some interesting and great conversations today.
Well, let's jump back in,
Thanks,
and I
Ian.
think it's time to introduce Radina and give Radina the floor, Nina. I think you're just to say, Nina, I think
All
your
right.
internet's
Thank
a bit
you. Just
slow.
want to double
Nina.
check.
Your internet's just a bit slow, so just be aware of there's a bit of a lag from your side.
Right. Thank you. I've picked that up. Can you see the introduction slide with Radina? Okay. I'm glad Radina took over. It seems like my internet is a little bit slow. So sorry, everyone. We are very excited to introduce Radina. Can you all hear me well?
Yeah.
Great. So Radina is passionate about helping church and ministry leaders see stewardship and fundraising as part of God's plan for their ministry. And I've heard a bit of a story as we engaged in preparation for this session. And it is just so inspiring to hear that God has really prepared her for the place that she's in now. And she really lives out her passion. She's boiling over with her excitement and passion to really instill the belief that local fundraising is possible and that it could be sustainable, that it could be a joy, and that it is part of God's plan for your ministry. So, Radina, thank you so much for being here today and for sharing your knowledge and experience with such passion today. And we're looking forward to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you, Nina. It's a pleasure to be here. I come to you live from Istanbul. That's not my usual location, but I happen to be in Istanbul for a few days and returning to the UK tomorrow. As Nina said, I work with Christian organizations and with churches, helping them to develop their fundraising strategies and to launch engaging fundraising campaigns with different constituencies. I have been doing this for the last 20 years, but to be honest, it's only been perhaps the last 18 months when I have focused more on trying to understand some of the dynamics of growing local giving in different contexts. As a fundraiser from the UK, as a consultant in the UK, we obviously raise a lot of funds for ministries in the country and also for their mission partners in different times, in different places in the world. But in conversation with my clients' mission partners and in my role as a catalyst for the Lausanne movement for ministry fundraising, I have started to engage with leaders in different parts of the world, asking them questions. Why is fundraising challenging in your context? How do you go about raising funds locally? What are some of the difficulties you face and some of the steps you can take to grow local giving? And what I will be sharing with you this afternoon really are insights from scripture and some of the perspectives I have gained from conversations with different leaders who are already raising funds locally. So, sorry, why have I have gone to the beginning of the slides? Yes. So I think, one of the first questions I want to ask you, or the first question I want to ask you is, how does your ministry fundraise? I think we got a glimpse of what that looks like because, perhaps half of you or just over half of you responded in the AHA slides. And several of you said that you raise most of the funds locally. So local churches and believers obviously support your mission. But there are some of you who perhaps depend heavily on funding from abroad for your mission work. And you might feel frustrated, as some leaders I have met do. They feel frustrated that somebody from outside is dictating how they should spend the money. They feel frustrated that they are putting all their efforts in the mission, but they don't have really time or even knowledge to raise funds. And that if they want to expand an area of ministry or grow, they don't really know how to go about it because they don't have the funding support. Perhaps there are some leaders amongst you who, have income streams that are not diversified. So maybe you are just raising the majority of your funding from foundations or from a handful of wealthy individuals or churches that support your mission work. Or perhaps you are on personal support. So people are supporting you when you have a small amount of money to invest on different projects. But really, you are kind of the person who is being funded to do the work. And if you are just depending on one or two income streams, then your ministry might be at risk. Because if one major funder pulls out or one foundation stops giving to your work, then you will probably stop what you're doing. You know, it might take you up to 18 months to actually replace the funding you have already lost from these people. And a real question for you to think about, and perhaps go and look carefully at your organization's database. Look at the trends of giving over the last 3 years. You know, who has given, how much have they given, and see that, is there continuity from these supporters? Are these big supporters to your ministry and your mission, you know, giving from one year to the next? Because can your ministry survive or even thrive if a handful of these big supporters pulled out? You know, if these people who are sitting at the top of your supporters pyramid, if they were to walk away, you know, can your ministry still be about? So depending on funding from outside, high risk for many ministries, especially as we see in the Western world, you know, in the UK or the United States, that even those most generous ministries and churches sometimes have to pull funding away from a partner or direct it into another place. We see that perhaps Christianity is now growing and thriving in other parts of the world, in the global south, not in the global north, not in the countries we live in. So as the church attendance goes down in the global north, in the US, in Germany, in England, in other countries, so does the funding for mission work. So there might be less funding around. So stop and think about these questions of where you are at. Where is your organization at regarding funding? You know, are you depending heavily on money from outside? Are you depending heavily on one or two or three income streams? Are all your eggs in one basket, so to say? You know, can your ministry be there tomorrow if your big funders pulled out, you know, in the next 3 months? Will you be able to survive? Will you be around after that time? How are you engaging with local churches and with local believers for your mission? The emphasis of this session will be on growing local giving. And before we look at how we can grow local giving, I want to present to you 3 biblical reasons you can use in your conversations with church leaders, in conversations perhaps through your communications, through your organization's communications, through your newsletters, through your emails, through your magazines, on your website, as to why local giving matters. Why do releasing funding locally matters to you, matters to me, matters to all of us as leaders in Christian ministries? Well, the first reason is because through their giving, local believers can show obedience to God's command to love and serve others. So when you as a leader are reaching out to local churches, to local businessmen, to local young people, to local community groups, you are giving them an opportunity to love and serve God. So this is a wonderful reason why you should be reaching out and engaging with local churches in your mission. Jesus says in Matthew 25, verse 35, "For I was hungry and you gave me food. I was thirsty and you gave me drink. I was a stranger and you welcomed me." When you invite local believers and local churches to participate in God's work through your organization, you are enabling them to feed the local hungry people. You are enabling them to take the good news to those who are suffering. You are enabling them to receive, the water of life and to welcome the strangers who live in local communities. I worked a while ago with a mission agency in England called a Church Urban Fund, and it's an organization that supports local projects. So I went and asked many church leaders what inspires them to be part of the work of Church Urban Fund. And many of them said, because the work Church Urban Fund does is around the corner. It's just a few miles from where my church is. So we have this opportunity to be good news to the local community. Now, as a ministry leader, you might think, my ministry is good news to the local community, and that's great. But remember also that local churches ministry through you, through your organization is also good news. Give them the chance to participate in God's work through your mission. Open the doors of your organization to actually engage with local churches, to engage with local believers. Invite them to respond to local needs. So don't sit there doing ministry on your own. I have just returned from spending, several weeks in Eastern Europe and doing several training sessions with ministry leaders in Eastern Europe. And what I discovered, and I wasn't happy about this, I felt quite sad, is that for most of these ministries, they don't even know any other ministries in the region. They don't really engage with any of the local church communities. They are too busy doing the work with funding coming from the United States or from the international bodies of their organizations. Well, what about local people? God's people, the local church, is the place where believers gather, where believers worship, where believers serve. So engage with the local church. I believe God can bless and encourage and strengthen your ministry if it is rooted in the love and care of the local church. So think of ways how you can engage with them, because through their engagement in your work, they are showing obedience to God. Such a wonderful thing for them to do. The second reason why local funding matters is because it builds and strengthens the local community of believers, that unity, that partnership, that collaboration between churches and ministries that can truly accelerate the fulfillment of the Great Commission. You cannot do God's work alone. You need partners who have the same heart, the same desire, the same vision as you do. So reach out and engage with these partners. The scripture says, bear one another's burdens and so fulfill the law of Christ. So by inviting local churches and believers to give to your ministry, to pray for your ministry, to volunteer with you, to share resources in practical ways, you are enabling them to bear their neighbors' burdens, to fulfill the law of Christ through their generosity and their prayers. So how can you communicate this? Again, when you look perhaps at your e-updates, at your newsletters, at other communications you send out to supporters, how about incorporating perhaps this scripture and a simple invitation? Will your church like to bear the neighbor's burden? Will you join us? And by being part of our community, by giving, by praying, you are bearing the burdens of others. You are fulfilling the law of Christ. You are helping to build and to strengthen the community. One of the reasons sometimes why churches don't feel quite sort of unwilling to participate in local missions is because local missions go to the church with I'm here to get something from you mentality. So leave that mentality at the door. The pastor, the leader, the vicar, the minister is tired of hearing sometimes yet another agency coming in and saying, give us money, do this for us, do this, do the other. Just don't approach them with this desire to just take something from them, to get something from them, but approach them with the desire to bless them, to invite them to join you as partners, as friends in God's work. They can pray for you. You can pray for the church. You can pray for the congregation. You can pray for that community. So the relationship is a two-way relationship. Talk to them about building community, about being friends, about giving something to the congregation. Maybe you can share stories. Maybe you can share with them ways they can engage with children and young people if you are a children's and young people's ministry, or how they can minister to the elderly, how they can, do other things for people in their communities. So be a blessing to the local church. Be the one who builds and strengthens community. Be the giver and not just the receiver from others. And the third reason is because releasing local funding actually shows faith in action. So also faith by itself, if it does not have work, is dead, says James. Faith without works is dead. We know this Bible verse very well, but we can reflect on it and we can use it in the context of strengthening relationships with local churches and local individuals. We can invite them to show their faith in action, to put their faith to work, to not just be the place that is talking about God's love, but is sharing God's love in practical ways through their deeds. In one of the conversations with a ministry leader from Georgia, I heard how through their work as a youth ministry, they go out and they help local congregations to actually build better relationships, to reach out to children and young people. And it is people in these congregations who bake cakes and they make little presents and, create school packs actually for children who join the afternoon sessions, who go to these churches for their afternoon activities. During my last week, I was in Moldova with a Christian ministry, and we went to visit some of their projects. And there were wonderful examples of how the local church was inviting local believers to put their faith at work by reaching out to children and young people. Through these partnerships between the ministry I was serving, Mission Without Borders, and local churches, coordinators in local churches, they were able to bring hundreds of children to the church in places where there were no children in the local church. The church was just a group of adults, and that group wasn't getting any bigger. But when the ministry started to partner with the local church and invited believers to show their faith in action by volunteering, by providing food, by providing, drinks and school materials, school supplies for children, they just created this place where children could come, hear about Jesus, receive love, receive support, and bring even their parents to church to hear the good news. So here it is, churches and ministries really working together for God's kingdom, and each one giving and participating locally. All that work was really funded in many occasions just by the local ministry in Moldova and local churches in different rural communities. So you will have these slides, take a look at these principles, reflect on them, pray about them, pray about perhaps any prejudices you might have in your heart against engaging sometimes local churches or local believers. Ask God to open your eyes to see opportunities, to show you who are the people perhaps that He can bring to your path and how you can communicate with them so you can start to build stronger partnerships locally, or even make the partnerships you have kind of multiply and flourish in the future. So as we stop with the 3 principles, I would like you to now we will go into breakout rooms, and we'll have about 12 minutes in these rooms. And I would like to invite you to respond to 2 questions. The first one is, how is fundraising perceived in your culture? Is fundraising a good thing or not so good thing? What are some of the kind of perceptions and challenges around fundraising and giving? And the second question is, if you are fundraising locally, please share with the groups some of the steps with your group, some of the steps you are taking that is making your fundraising successful or effective. And Nina has put here very helpfully some guidelines for engagement. So you can start with a brief introduction, only share something you feel comfortable sharing, show up and serve others by listening well. And as Nina said from the beginning, if your network allows, please turn on your camera and use the ask for help button if you need any support. And we will keep what is shared in confidence. So feel free and comfortable to sort of trust the group of people you are with and share with them.
Hello, everyone. Trust you had some great conversations and are very curious to hear what's next to get from Radina, the 3 steps that she's prepared for us to release local funding. So Radina, without any further ado, I'm handing over back to you.
Thank you, Nina. So we will look at 3 steps for releasing local funding. Perhaps you are doing any of these steps, and we will have an opportunity to discuss this in the next breakout session. But the first step is focusing on the people that God has brought to you, and people that He has brought to your organization. So the people God has placed around you. Now, as a consultant, I'm often called by organizations saying, we need money, we need help. Can you just contact this big foundation, the Vardy Foundation in the UK, or do you know people at McClellan Foundation in the States or somewhere else, like the J. Lang Trust in the UK and so on. So almost every mission organization I meet, almost every ministry thinks that money is going to come from somebody outside, from people they don't know, from organizations or from foundations they don't really have a relationship with. But from my experience and also from scripture, we can see that raising funds is a bit like how the gospel was spread, how the word of God spreads from one community to the next. We read in Acts chapter 1, verse 8, that the first disciples who were in Jerusalem really received the Holy Spirit, but you will receive the power when the Holy Spirit comes on you. And you will be my witnesses in Jerusalem and in all Judea and Samaria and to the ends of the earth. Jesus came to Jerusalem. The gospel started there. The good news that was embodied in the Son of God, all those relationships that he built, all those people that they saw him, they saw the miracles and everything he did. And those people who believed, those that were entrusted with the good news, they took the good news to other communities. They went outwards. In a similar way, when it comes to raising funds, you cannot expect people at the ends of the earth to take an interest in you because they don't know who you are. They don't know what you're doing, So who is your Jerusalem? Who is your Judea? Who is your Samaria? If you want to grow local funding, or if you want to take the first steps in getting local funding, that you need to open your eyes and see the people that God has put around you. See the people that he brings to your path. What are the local churches in your area that can become your mission partners? So go out there, meet those church leaders, go to events hosted by local churches together, go and see pastors, pray with them, listen to them, discover what God is doing in their churches and how can your mission or your ministry be part of it. What can you contribute to them? And then as you contribute and bless them, they will bless you in return. They'll contribute to your mission work. Are there any Christian business people who can become your strategic supporters in your community? One of my really good friends and a consultant I learned a lot from is Bill McConkie. And Bill used to read all the newspapers and magazines in his area. He would say, okay, let's see, who are the business people in our community? What are they doing? Where are they gathering? Who are the people that perhaps meet together with special interests in different groups, in different clubs? Are there any believers amongst these people? Can we go and communicate with them? Can we go and be their friends? So see the local Christian people that God has brought in your community. Try to reach out, try to connect with them. Look at individuals who can become prayer warriors, volunteers, or regular supporters. People around you who can support your mission work. Invite people from local churches to volunteer for your organization. And as they volunteer, you might train and equip them, and they can help you and what you're doing, but they can also take some of the principles of doing mission work, of ministering to different groups of people who are needy, who are struggling, who need help and hope. They can take them to their churches and start new groups and start new ways of ministering to people. So rather than looking further afield, look around you. We met in Albania a couple of weeks ago at Ministry Fundraising Network, and I think some of the people who are here were also at that meeting. And one of the Albanian pastors at the meeting shared a really moving story that talks about the power of connections and the power of prayer. She said that they wanted to buy a piece of land in a village so that they could plant a church in that community. And these communities are very, very Muslim. And she said, we prayed and prayed and prayed for months for this particular piece of land that we could purchase, but we didn't have enough money to purchase it. And she said, our church took a whole week of prayer and fasting for this. And then suddenly she received an email from a friend with, with an offering of money that was just the amount they needed. And this person wrote in the email that God woke him up in the middle of the night. And he said, I woke up in the middle of the night with these words in my head, reclaim my land. And he said, I started crying and I couldn't stop crying until the morning. And then God made me, think of you and your husband, about my friend, the pastor, and her husband, and said, he just put it in my heart that I should send this money to you. So the money arrived in time for the purchase of the land, for the church to be built. And when the purchase was closed, actually, one of the village elders said to the pastor and his wife, do you know what land have you bought? And they said, what's the story of this land? Tell us. He said, actually, 300 years ago in this place, there was a church. But the church was destroyed during the Ottoman rule. And now, 300 years later, there will be a church in that place once again. So God's land was reclaimed. So here is a story of somebody who has built relationships, who prays, who brings the requests before God. And then God touches the hearts of the people. And the money comes in. Now it's a miraculous case, but God can make miracles in your settings, big and small miracles. In another occasion, I was talking to a ministry leader and they were having a difficult financial situation. And as we were talking about potential local major donors, it was a Christian counseling center. Then the secretary of the director said, well, there is this gentleman, this wealthy man in my church. He has this lumber business and maybe we can talk to him. And he went and spoke to this gentleman and they had lunch and a couple of conversations and told him about the work. Within a few weeks, they received a gift of £15,000 from somebody who was there in the community, who hadn't taken an interest in the ministry before, but God opened the door for the leader to have this conversation, this connection. So every time you get together with your leaders, with your volunteers, with people who have got their hearts invested in your ministry, with these local people, pray together and then ask each other, are there any other people we know we can introduce to this ministry? Can we issue this invitation for them to show their love in action for local people, for them to participate in local mission? God can bless your efforts, but you have to stay tuned to his thinking and his heart. Don't think that your help will always come from abroad. God has brought these believers. They are there in your church, in your community, in your neighborhood, in the next town, in the next village. So reach out to them and share with passion what God has called you to do and invite them to join you in God's mission. So focus on the people God has placed around you. Start praying that God will show you who these people are, who might take an interest in your work. God will touch their hearts. They will open their hearts and their wallets to your mission. But maybe they are just sitting there indifferent because they don't know about you or because you're not asking. You seem to be doing okay without their help. The second step is, I don't know why. The second step is tell compelling stories. Ask your supporters, ask your new friends, local friends to give. Thank them well and report back. So there are several steps in this cycle. Tell compelling stories. People don't need to know about your programs and activities. Every time I sit with ministry leaders, they just want to talk about their programs and their services, and they use a huge amount of acronyms, or they use statements or words that don't really make sense to outsiders. Well, outsiders who want to join in are not interested in your processes. They are interested in seeing lives transformed. They want to see how this child who was living in poverty and hopelessness is now happy, is now going to school, now knows about Jesus perhaps and has become a follower, reads the Bible and prays. You know, they want to know how perhaps this woman who had cataract in her eyes now can see and rebuild her life. They want to know how this person who had never seen a Bible before in their own language can now read God's word in their language. You know, they are not really interested in all the steps you do and all the activities and your programs and all the acronyms that go with your programs. So what are the stories you can take to your local friends, to your local church, you know, to your local congregations? And those stories are built, especially for fundraising. There are 4 things built into those stories. The first thing is that these stories speak of a specific need or opportunity, something that a person, not necessarily talking about the whole community, but just a person, a child, a woman, a man, a family, need. And then they talk about the solution that your ministry offers to this. If that need is food on the table or opportunity to go to school or a bus to take them to school or clean water or whatever it is that your organization provides, then the solution is what you make possible for them. What is it that you take? You take the food, you take the books, you take the bus, you have you have got the printed resources to put in their hands or radio programs and everything else. So what's the need? What's the solution? And how the third element in the story is how the supporter or the new supporter or the church can be part of the solution. What can they bring? What can their gift make possible? And why is the response needed by these local believers and local congregations? Why is it needed now? Why is it urgent? So every good story has these 4 elements. It speaks to the need in powerful emotional ways. It provides a solution that is trustworthy, that is something that you have done in the past, or you have the confidence to actually offer a new solution because you have the knowledge and you have the experience as an organization. It talks about the invitation, the ask to the supporter for a gift, for prayers, for participating, and what that will make possible as part of the solution. And it talks about the urgency, why they should give now and not next time. So look at the people you are serving and try to capture some of their stories in their own words. Take photos, perhaps create some small videos that just show how their life was before and how their lives have been transformed, or that speak of the aspirations of what their lives could be if somebody else walked alongside them, if a supporter, if a church came alongside them. Gather these stories and then share these stories with passion, because people are inspired by stories. They remember stories and they respond better to stories than to anything else. And as you have issued an invitation to give through your stories, and as people and churches give, then make sure you thank them promptly and you thank them well. This is something that Christian ministries fail to do well compared to secular charitable organizations. Sometimes as Christians, we think, well, this is God's work. People are giving to God's work. So why they should thank them? Why should they expect a thank you? Or we are too busy putting the checks, processing the gifts and doing other things. So we will thank people 2 weeks from now or 3 weeks from now. That wouldn't do. I have had cases of organizations I've worked with where they even send just one line of text saying, thank you for your gift. And somebody was giving like 100 euros. Or organizations that say, please tick this box if you do not wish to be thanked. Why would people not wish to be thanked? Remember that with that thank you also goes the feedback that this is what we will do with the gift, or this is what we did with your gift. If a family member made a gift to you, you'd thank them, you'd hug them, you'd say something wonderful back to them. Well, we should do the same to our supporters, because by thanking people well, by putting a smile in their faces and bringing joy in their hearts when they see how we got the gift and what we will use it for and what change it will make in somebody's life. Actually, we encourage them, we inspire them to keep giving to our organizations. So thanking people quickly, ideally within 24 or 48 hours of making a gift, the same goes for congregations, is really key to keeping that relationship and to making that relationship flourish in the future and seeing more gifts come from these people to our organizations. And then reporting back, telling them through our newsletters, through our e-updates, through videos, how we use their gift. I think one of the AHA slides at the beginning was about providing updates to people during fundraising campaigns. Well, this is in the same vein. You know, those updates are the thank yous and telling people how much has been raised and how will it be used. So that, again, inspires people to give again and again, or inspires those who haven't given. It's just a nice encourager, prompter for them to actually make a gift. So remember that as you get new people, local churches engaged with your ministry and mission, then your responsibility is to tell stories that touch their hearts and motivate them to join in God's work through your mission by making a gift, by praying, by volunteering. You ask them well within those stories to make a gift that is specific and it is timely, a gift that will be put to work urgently to meet those specific needs. And you thank people well, and then you report back what you did with their contributions. And that reporting can happen straight away, but it also can happen maybe 6 months from now. You know, you say, look at the school, look at the hospital, look at the group of these kids who are now continuing with their discipleship classes. This is what your gift, this is what your generosity has made possible. And the third step, which is key for all kinds of donors, but more importantly for local donors, is being a good steward of their gifts and being accountable and transparent. Remember that when a foundation from abroad makes a gift, you just send them a few photos and they are satisfied with them. They will not come to see your project. They will not come to meet the people they have helped. But local churches and local believers are different. They are there, they are in the community. They can come and have a look. They know how you have done the work. They know what has happened. So it is far more important, I think, in the context of local relationships, to be a good steward, to be a friend who keeps the organization with open doors so people can come and see what God has done through their generosity and their prayers, and also to be accountable and transparent. Accountability and trust are key factors for receiving repeat gifts. I was talking to some leaders in Albania recently, and they said, look, we know wealthy people, you know, there are wealthy people in Albanian communities, doctors and accountants and people working for the government and, you know, university lecturers who are believers. But often they don't give because they cannot trust the ministry or the church. They are not convinced that they are going to use the money for the intended purposes that it was asked for. And this is a sad situation. And this is not just happening in Albania. It happens in other parts of the world, in different countries too, where local people feel, I'm not sure, you know, that you'd use it for those purposes. Even if you are doing things right, you are, you know, as a ministry, you are doing things by the book. You are failing to communicate to outsiders. You are failing to communicate to donors that you are accountable and that you are transparent and that you are a good steward. Because you might think, well, it is up to us to use finances. People don't need to know. We don't have to share our accounts. We don't have to share financial information. We don't have to do this. We don't have to do that. Well, that mindset then keeps you in a situation where, you know, you are not trusted by supporters. So if you want to be a good steward, if you want to grow local giving, put these things into place. Show supporters that you have got sound systems and procedures for all the management of financial resources and other resources coming into your organization, like gifts in kind. You know, how do you account for everything coming in? You know, do you have committees? Do you have outside auditors who look into your organization's accounts? Do you make financial information available? Use supporters' gifts for the intended purposes. So set up the systems that connect different gifts linked to the campaigns you have done, to the ways you have raised funds, to the projects that you are going to dedicate the money to. And again, have people who are actually becoming, you know, the gatekeepers of these processes and procedures within your ministry, so that they can say, look, we raised this money. This is how the money was used. Show local churches and supporters how their gifts have made a difference. Have open days. Invite people from the local churches and local community, or local donors, to come and see your projects, to come and talk to the people who have benefited from your ministry, to come and see for themselves the school, the packs, the materials that you have provided, and communicate financial information regularly. One of my clients in the Czech Republic says that every quarter he sends out this newsletter with financial information that is really open and transparent. This is how much money we have raised this quarter. This is how much money we have in the bank. This is how much we have spent, and this is how we have spent it. And here are, you know, the information about how different supporter groups have given to our mission work. You know, not mentioning names, but just saying we have had this many gifts at this amount from individuals, from churches, from, you know, they get some government money as well. So that information is there, available for everyone to see. So just by applying these simple steps, you are, you know, being accountable and transparent and a good steward on the inside, because you have the systems and procedures in place. But also through your communications, you are showing all supporters how you are a good steward of the resources that they have entrusted to you and your mission work. So when you do these things well, you will see giving, especially local giving, grow for your mission work, because people will be able to have confidence that they can invest in your ministry and see the outcomes for God's purposes.
Thank you. So before we head into questions and discussions, we would love to hear from you. What are you going to do differently as a result of this webinar? So what is that one thing that you are going to do next from what you've heard today? So even if it is just, yeah, I see telling stories better, that is already a great suggestion, and I think such a powerful start. So even if it just stimulated a small thought, or even though it inspired a change of thinking, we would love to hear from you what that is. And as you've probably seen in the WhatsApp group that we'll share later, we tend to post what you've said you're going to be doing next in that group to inspire everyone else, and also to remind you, so that you can really reap the value of the time that you've invested here. Right, we've got some great elements coming up here. Thank donors timelessly. That I really love that, and I've heard from friends and people that I know who got discouraged from not really getting any feedback, or just a little bit of gratitude or acknowledgement from the ministries. And it's so great that you mentioned that. I was happy to hear that from you, Radina, because it makes a much bigger difference than we realize. So it was good to be reminded of that. Tell more stories and less of programs and projects. That is such a great point that you made there. I see a lot about stories coming through, saying thank you for every single donation. I know that could be a laborious exercise, but that is the part that we need to figure out, right? How do we do this and not be overburdened? And if there's other follow-up questions that come to mind, we'll have a WhatsApp group afterwards. We would love for you to ask and learn from each other. Share regularly information about finances. Yes, amazing. Great. There's so many good things on here, and I'm tempted to read more, but I do want to take you back to the presentation. If there's some of you who's not sure what to do next, there is a great course on telling impactful stories. So I saw also a lot of you mentioned that is the next thing that you want to do. So the good news is we've got some courses for you that will help you do that better, so that you can tell your stories in an impactful way, and also ensure that you communicate clearly the impact that your organization is having. We've learned now again and have been reminded why that is so, so important. And we also have a course that can help you with your financial systems to make sure that transparency is not a cause of anxiety for you, but something that you are comfortable with because you're well prepared. So head over to the 54 website, and there's a lot of stuff that would hopefully help you do this better and support your fundraising. But enough about me. Let's head back to speaking to Radina. And Radina, the first question that I saw come up is, let me just scroll back to it. It was from Anna-Marie Franken, and she said, what is the risk of exhausting your local community when you constantly launch another fundraiser?
I mean, yes, that can be a real risk, but what I'm suggesting is that you don't really, you don't go to your local community every month. So you can think of, for example, of relationships with churches and saying, are there maybe 2 or 3 times a year where we can do something to encourage local churches to support our work? So, you think of a couple of times a year where you can do more focused local church campaigns. And in the meantime, as a leader, you also, as I said, spend time with local church leaders, go to where they gather, go to the events they're hosting. You can use social media to share your stories. And that's where local people will naturally congregate. So if you're, for example, your Facebook group, you have got, you are a local ministry, you have got friends and volunteers of your organization, kind of being there on Facebook, encourage them to share your good news stories, encourage them to share your fundraising campaigns with their friends. Because if they are local people, the chances are that in their Facebook group, in their Facebook pages or personal Facebook, they will have other local believers, other friends who might take an interest in your work. So you would think of community fundraising maybe 2 or 3 times a year, church fundraising, again, 2 or 3 times a year, creative ways of preparing materials for churches, mini sermons or Bible study notes or activities for children that relate to your area ministry. So you provide something helpful to the church, but at the same time, you have an opportunity to share about your story and what you're doing and invite them to support your work. So think of it positively, and also bear in mind that research shows that it takes 3 to 6 times of people hearing the same message before they pay any attention. So if somebody complains, they are in the minority of the minorities. There will always be people who will say, you're begging too much, you're asking too much. And there will be a handful of people, 3, 5, or even 10 people out of thousands. So don't change your fundraising campaigns because a handful of people who got off on the wrong side of the bed complained about them. Stay positive, stay focused, and find ways of sharing stories of need where they can give, but also positive stories of encouragement of what God makes possible in people's lives, and constantly thank people for their support.
Right. Thank you so much, Radina. Guys, we still have a few minutes for answering questions. I see there is one in the chat, but if there's anyone who wants to come off mute and ask, please feel free to do so. I'll just give a second, otherwise I'll jump to the question in the chat. All right. So, Radina, we've got another question that is asking, a lot of what you've shared is about partnership with local work. In your experience, what is the main thing that limits local partnership?
What is the main thing that limits local partnerships? I think there are 2 things really. One is perhaps the perspective of the leader of the ministry. Sometimes ministry leaders feel like they are the lone heroes, that they are doing this thing that nobody kind of, wants to give to. So they would rather struggle alone. So sometimes I think that the main challenge is you as a leader changing your perspective and thinking, actually, other people want to join in this. God has put the same dream and desire about this specific thing, whatever it is, in the hearts of other people too. So what if I shared my dream with them and invited them to join? You know, that could change things. So it's the leader perhaps being unwilling to ask for all, you know, for all kinds of reasons. And the other thing, especially in relation to local churches, is them seeing the ministries as simply takers from the congregation. You are here to take away people, to take money for your work. So it's almost like local church being set in competition with ministries. And some years ago, when I did focus groups with church leaders in England, several of them said, we'd love for a mission agency or for a local organization to come and say, what is God doing through your church? Then listen, and then say, how can my ministry be part of this? How can we help your church to be better at whatever? So they were looking for ministries who were willing to invest in the church, as well as kind of take from the church. So I think if you as a church leader start the conversation with what God is doing in your church, or with a believer, what God is doing in your life, what is God calling you to do, you know, with your resources, with your time, what is it you are passionate about? Let me listen to it, and let me then see whether, you know, this is a journey we can take together. You know, how can I help you? How can I bless you? And in fact, an invitation to somebody to support your work is just like that. It gives them the opportunity to fulfill their dream and their vision of changing the world for God. So through your fundraising invitations, you are the catalyst of connecting God's people to God's causes. You give opportunities to God's people through your ministry to actually impact the world with their gifts and with their prayers. So see yourself as someone who is in the service of churches and individuals who want to be good stewards of their resources. And then try and see whether there is a synergy between their vision and your vision, so that you can serve God together.
Thank you, Radina. That really is such a refreshing perspective. Thank you. And it is simple, doable, and will most certainly bring change if you engage in that manner from that perspective. I see we've got 2 more comments, so let's see how far we get. Can you comment on the process if your ministry is not in the local area where you are living, i.e. your work is in other parts of the world? Yeah, that's a good question.
Yes, so in a sense, you are, I mean, it doesn't, you know, you can still share your stories and invite these people wherever you are to give to God's work somewhere else. And in fact, you know, if you are a ministry in Africa and you are supporting God's work in Europe or in, you know, in Asia, that is a wonderful thing too, because historically, money has always flown from wealthier countries, you know, the US, the UK, Germany, Sweden, Norway, to the rest of the world. But now, actually, if your ministry, you can inspire people and say, hey, we are in the business of mission, and this is our chance to actually help to support God's work, God's mission in another part of the world. So they would be, you know, they would be willing to give to that work. I mean, the principles apply whether it is local or whether your money is for somewhere else, you know. If God has placed your ministry, your leaders in that particular location, then you have opportunities to meet local people and local leaders, to engage them in mission, to share stories, to ask for support, to be accountable and transparent. You know, I think those things matter to people, whatever part of the world we're in.
Right. So where your mission, your ministry is planted, not necessarily where it's serving, where it's planted is where what you're referring to as local, your local community. Okay, that's helpful. Thank you, Radina. And I think this will be our last question. Thank you everyone for engaging. And whatever is left, please keep posting in the chat because we'll put it on the WhatsApp group and we'll get answers to those questions. So don't be discouraged. But the last question is, we find that sometimes the local churches in our African context require certain gifts just to engage as partners, since many ministries pay them for partnership. Since we don't do this, it can be challenging. This has required years of vision casting, changing paradigms in the way churches engage ministries, NGOs, and etc. We're now seeing more and more traction, praise God, but wanted to ask this question for Radina. Do you see this changing? Are ministries reducing these kinds of payments? And is there a shift away from this in the nonprofit world?
I think that's probably, I mean, in my experience, you know, we don't pay like in the UK or other parts of Europe, ministries don't pay churches. I think the way ministries would give a gift to the church is maybe sometimes take the leader on a mission trip or take the church's leadership team. So that kind of gift of, you know, the church leader has a chance to see projects or to meet children that are looking for sponsors or so on. And it is a way that as a gift kind of helps the leader to see for themselves so they can come and persuade the congregation. But we have seen in the past kind of, you know, when there are Christian conferences and events, so when it comes to sponsorships and some of the money that is given for some ministries to have a more prominent place than others, you know, this is something that happens, and it's continuing to happen. But I think if it is shifting in the African context, that idea of paying the church, maybe some ministries can say, look, we can't, you know, it is not right to pay, but we can provide knowledge, we can provide expertise on how to do evangelism and mission, or on how to care for, you know, for widows, or how to do counseling. So the ministry can maybe offer some free training, or, you know, free sessions, or some resources to the church that the church can use. And then, you know, the church can engage maybe by making a gift. So that's probably a more equitable and honorable way of serving the church and saying, look, we are prepared to do this. You know, we are prepared to share our knowledge. We are prepared to share resources and bless you and help you with understanding God's word. But, you know, we won't pay money for you. And I think sometimes if, you know, it's the same like ministries in other parts of the world not accepting gifts from donors that might have made that money in questionable ways, or not accepting gifts that come with strings of how the ministry should be done. And at the moment you make that decision, it is tough and you feel, gosh, we could have done with the money. But I think God honors our decisions. If we stand on God's word and on his truths, and if we act with integrity, then God will not let us suffer, or our ministry suffer financially. So I would like to encourage you, you know, do the right thing. Don't go paying. Don't kind of try to support paradigms that, or keep alive ways of working that are not biblical, but step out in faith and say, you know, I'll do things in line with God's word, in line with God's principles. And God can actually provide. God will open doors. If that relationship doesn't work with the church, there will be other churches and other believers willing to partner with you. So hold your breath and kind of trust God and step forward in faith.
Wow, thank you so much, Radina. That is powerful and insightful. And we're really honored to hear and be able to ask questions from you. I'm really sorry that we have to cut this short, and I hope that some of you will join on the WhatsApp group so that we can continue the engagement. We've learned a lot from Radina, and it's been so great. And we would also really love to learn from you. We really want to make this better and more helpful. So a poll will be coming up right about now. And we would really appreciate it if you take a minute to give us your feedback on how you've experienced the session. So we'll just keep the poll up for a moment, and I'll take you through some of the reminders. So we do have some upcoming events if you want to register for that on the website. And also, I know a lot of you asked for the recording, so I'm not sure if you've seen, but if you go to your dashboard, you can also access the recording of this session and watch it again later. I know there were so many great pointers that I would want to go back to, and some great stories that stir so much inspiration. So if you want to go back to that, you're welcome, and you'll find it on the site. The recording will be available on on the 54 website tomorrow. And like we mentioned, Radina's courses are coming soon. We're all very excited about that. And then you can continue the amazing learning that we've kicked off today. And then also, as you've probably discovered, we host these WhatsApp groups after the webinar where we'll continue to drop some content and some more deeper learning inspirations. And if you have any other questions, or if some of the stuff that was mentioned today are things that you've implemented and that you've found ways to make it work really well, this is such a great place to share that. I really want to encourage you to take a moment. I know there's no benefit for you in it, but it is really special and helpful to learn from other leaders. So if you've got some learnings to share, please do that. And yeah, Radina, thank you so much for the time you've given us. I'm so inspired by what you've shared, and I will pray for you leaders as well, that God will give you the eyes to find the people around you that He's placed in your community that you need to engage with, that He would highlight for you the stories that you need to share. That's really stories that's going to stir their heart, and that you'll find ways to communicate with all the different generations and just really connect with their heart when you share about what your ministry is doing. And I also pray that you would have easy financial system support that can help you be more transparent, and that it would just keep on building trust with your donors, as that is so important. Yes, so scan that code and we'll post all of the relevant courses on the WhatsApp group, and we can keep the learning going. And then the exciting announcement that we wanted to mention, I know a lot of you were on the edge of your chairs to share 54 with other people that you know, and we are finally going public. So as of 1 May, so not yet, we have to hold the horses a little bit more, but as of 1 May, you are welcome to share 54, the link to our platform, and get everyone registered so that we can have more ministries and more people learning together. So up to now, you've been our special initial group of individuals who's been on the platform, but we're excited to have it reach more and more people around the world. So we are very excited, and I hope that you are excited as well. And lastly, just a reminder of everything that's on 54. So we've got the 9D assessment that you can take to get a better, to get more clarity and awareness on the health of your organization. And then courses and resources that you can do in response to that. So what your immediate need is, there's a lot of courses that can help you grow in that. And this that we've been busy with the last 90 minutes is an example of the live learning sessions that we're running. That's a bit more deeper learning on specific topics with amazing specialists. And then the WhatsApp learning community that's going to kick off right after the session. And you can scan that QR code if you want to participate in that. And I really want to encourage any of you, if you have any questions, if you want to engage, if there's any feedback that you want to share, or you just want to reach out and say hello, you can email me at nina@54collective.com. And I'd really love to hear from you. We really love community, we love engaging, and I really enjoy hearing from all of you. So feel free to share any feedback, any comments, or just say hi. Right, thank you everyone. I'll take us back to the AHA slide so we can see what others are going to be doing next. And I'll put on some background music for you so that you can take a deep breath and enjoy the last bit of time together.